You want some great coffee to bring to your coffee hour for after liturgy? Or how about just to drink every morning on your own? When I do drink coffee, this is the only brand I drink, Fox & Sons Coffee. They believe over there, my man Stephen Fox believes that coffee should come with a great story. His began on Saturday mornings with his dad, early breakfasts, good conversation, and a shared cup of coffee that sparked a lifelong passion. Those memories shaped who he is and inspired him to start this company, Fox & Sons Coffee, not just for the love of the coffee itself, but to honor his father and pass something meaningful to his two sons. Now, he's inviting you and me to be part of that legacy. If you guys need gifts, if you just love coffee, and like I said, maybe you just want to bring some to the parish for coffee hour, now is the perfect time to try these handcrafted, family-inspired blends. We've got a code for you, BUCK15 at checkout, BUCK 15 at checkout, get you 15% off all orders over $35, so you can save big and sip better coffee than you may be used to. This coffee, again, is made with love, roasted with purpose, shared with family. Fox & Sons Coffee, brewed from the heart.
This is a Dissident Media production. DissidentMedia.net.
You're tuned into the Counterflow Podcast, home of dissident voices,
unapproved opinions.
But you gotta get ready.
You ready?
Now here's your host
and humble narrator,
Buck Johnson. Let's go.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back once again. This is still the Counterflow Podcast. I am still your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson, and I'm still coming to you out of the barbecue capital of the world. Yes, that's right, Lockhart, Texas. Today is a subject I've been wanting to tackle for quite some time. And lo and behold, my friend, your friend of the show, Justin Marler, called me up and said, would you ever want to do a show that discusses psychotherapy and counseling therapy from an Orthodox perspective? Because I've got a guy. And I was like, yeah, I've been wanting to do this for quite some time. Tell me about him. And so it's our guest today, Nicholas Mamey. He is a psychotherapist, and he's got quite the in-depth education in theology and the church and all of these things, as you're going to hear. There's so much pop psychology these days, especially all over the Instagram reels and even X sometimes you see, and it's these sort of guys that are trying to give this deep advice, or women talking about their trauma and all of these things. And so much of it seems self-absorbed and thin and flimsy. And we get to talking about that stuff. I thought surely there's got to be some legitimate therapy out there for people. If you're interested in this, and a Christ-centered Orthodox man himself, Nicholas Mamey, is here to discuss exactly that, the problems with modern therapy, the goods, the bads, all of that stuff. So, without further ado, Nicholas Mamey, welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm excited to finally do this. It's a topic I've been hoping to do, and I couldn't find the right person to get on. And our mutual friend, Justin Marler, comes through, not even knowing I wanted to do this topic. And he texts me and he's like, hey, would you be interested in talking to a therapist who's Orthodox about this whole? And I'm like, yeah. So here you are. It's your first time on. And let's get you to give sort of a quick intro for yourself, who you are, what you do. And then we get into all kinds of fun stuff here. So go ahead.
Well, I guess my background is quite a bit in theology. I had my undergrad and grad school at Hellenic College in Holy Cross, where I got my my bachelor's in religious studies. Then I got my master's of divinity there. So I went to seminary. Then I got my postgraduate master's in theology and emphasized in dogmatics. From there, I worked with Bishop John Abdullah in the Antiochian Archdiocese, and we wrote a book together on marriage, which was a beautiful experience. And then I went back to school and I got my master's in clinical social work. And I've been a psychotherapist for about 5 years now. Yeah.
Okay. Well, see, it's the perfect combination because I wanted to approach it from an Orthodox perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I have thoughts on therapy. I have experience having therapy. I have questions on it. So I'm excited to do this. Let's start out with therapy, the therapy that you do. I mean, because like you said, you are Orthodox. So really, it's always inappropriate to say, do you look at this through an Orthodox lens? Because it's like, well, we look at everything through an Orthodox lens. So how does that affect the therapy you do? And maybe what differentiates your practice from others?
Right. So, like you said, as Orthodox, we try to approach everything from an Orthodox lens. If we are too sensitive about the people we want to see and the, whatever they're going through, whatever lifestyles they're living, if we're too sensitive to that, it's going to be very difficult to serve the world. And sensitive as in sensitive to our own needs and wants, So in my practice, I first I see if they're going to be a good fit, if they're willing to do the work, if they're, thinking of therapy as something that may be beneficial for them, if I see that in them as well. And we move from there. So whether they're Orthodox or not, my practice looks pretty similar. Now, if they're coming in as Orthodox and wanting Christian counseling, you may reference the fathers and other spiritual leaders, the scriptures, the church, the liturgy. But it's, approaching people with that love and understanding while staying firm in your own personal beliefs.
Mm-hmm. Largely speaking, like currently in our current time, what are some negatives you see about the world of therapy? Not even, obviously not your specific practice. I just mean therapy broadly speaking. And then I want to contrast it with things that you think are positive about it, because it gets, I would say, an overly friendly or obsessive perspective for a lot of people. Like, oh, I see my therapist. And then I've seen it where some people, even within Orthodox circles, are like, no, it's taboo. You can't do that. Right. So let's sort of contrast like the legitimate red flags or negative aspects of therapy, broadly speaking, with some positives that obviously it does help.
Yeah. I mean, in the past, I would say 5-10 years or so, you've seen this obsession with therapy as an answer to everything, right? And to the degree where it's almost taken on those who go to therapy, those who practice therapy, it's almost taken on its own kind of identity.
Yes.
Where people try to find their identity within the context of I am someone who goes to therapy. Yes. I am someone who practices therapy. And this is where things can get dangerous, and therapy itself becomes its own type of religion, right? And the reason, there's, in my opinion, this is something I've thought about quite a bit, our society is so starved for a common belief, a common a goal or aspiration to attain to as a society, that in many cases, therapy has, in some cases voluntarily and involuntarily become this fill for the void, if you will. Yes. People see that it's something, where they can discover things about themselves, that they can uncover things, these healthy things, right? But then they take it to this level of, it becomes completely about the self. It becomes completely enclosed within the system of the self, which in and of itself becomes kind of a form of idolatry, right? When everything is about your focus, or when all the focus is about you, then it leaves less and less room for Christ. This is where it can become dangerous, so that people try to find their identity in labels, in diagnoses. We see this a lot with ADHD, with autism disorder, with, all sorts of things where there are groups and very strict kind of identity parameters and confinements that people place on themselves because of their own struggles. And again, identifying yourself as your struggle is something that you become attached to. And when we become attached to that, it becomes our focus. When it becomes our focus, it becomes kind of like, a God in a way. This is a huge, and our society being as secular as it is, and pushing this individualistic, secular mentality, the field of therapy and psychology is not really doing, which is a beautiful art form, right? Is not doing itself any favors by adopting the culture of the time, the culture of this me, I, my truth, my feelings, my understandings. It's okay to be aware of those, but when those become the end all be all, this is the danger of therapy. And you hear this now, bring it into orthodoxy. You have some people who will completely demonize the practice of therapy, which I really don't understand. I do within the context of seeing the extremes like I expressed, obviously. But to demonize the entire thing, to throw the baby out with the bathwater, these are very serious, that has very, very serious repercussions for church communities, for priests, for the hierarchs, And thank God this is not the norm, but I see today this word of modern psychotherapy being thrown away or thrown out there by many Orthodox influencers. As a psychotherapist, I don't know what modern psychotherapy is. I think it's kind of a pop psych term or pop Orthodox term. And there are some modern innovations within psychotherapy that have been insurmountably relieving of pain and have allowed people to gain clarity so that they can be prepared to receive, things within the church. The idea that the priest has to be your marriage therapist, your counselor, your personal therapist, your, doctor, your all these things. It's not what we're trained in seminary. And in fact, at least at the seminary I went to, we were very much encouraged to, wherever we got assigned, if we were to be priests, to meet a psychotherapist that we could trust, or a psychiatrist that we could trust, so that when things become overwhelming outside of counseling for the priest or for the community, they have someone that can help intervene and learn. So, just as we don't demonize doctors who heal the body, we shouldn't demonize all therapists who help the person come to clarity regarding some issues in their mind.
In the Orthodox community, when one of our own goes through some really bad, hard times, we rally and we help. Our friend Cooper Brooks, who many of you might know from the King Pill podcast or the Astrolabe with our buddy Matt Erickson. Cooper was his regular co-host for quite some time. He still makes many appearances on there. He has some major issues and he needs our help. for his give, send, go. He got into a very bad accident. It was basically a guy driving this big Super Duty pickup, blew through a red light and slammed right into Cooper's driver's side door. His car was totaled. He got a CT scan. It revealed a small mass behind his right eye. He was referred to ophthalmology oncology department for an MRI, impossible biopsy. He's the only source of income for his family. He will be missing work days to deal with all of this. He's got employer-sponsored healthcare that's basically worthless, so he'll be responsible for, let's say, $10,000 of medical bills out of pocket at least. Again, he's Orthodox. He's got a very beautiful family that he's the provider for. So he needs our help. I'm going to link the Give, Send, Go in the show notes page for this episode. If you're watching it on YouTube, there's the address right there. We are giving you the link and all of that. Please donate to our friend Cooper Brooks. He's an Orthodox man, beautiful family, and we love Cooper on this show. Thank you, guys. One thing that has, because of social media and algorithms that pops up, and I want to ask this very genuinely because I don't know, but I see reels. Let's, sound like a millennial or a Gen Zer. I see reels and it's people like this sitting around with microphones, usually all together, and it's some guy expressing, well, this is why women are upset with men, because men do this. And if your man says this, blah, blah, blah. And then women saying, and women need to watch out. And it always seems there's a facade or something of like pop culture or like pop psychology. And then again, I don't want to sound like, to go back to 2020 and go, no, you got to trust the experts. You have to be an expert, because I'm certainly not in that camp either. Excuse me. Is there some sort of trend that you see online or content makers sort of using psychology or therapeutic terms or ways of doing things that aren't legitimate?
Like, my ex was a narcissist. If we actually look at the diagnosis of, narcissistic personality disorder, this is like extremely serious. Or, I have OCD. I have to make sure my room is clean at all times. It's like, do you know how absolutely crippling that disorder is? It's not just being a neat freak, right? So I think as a society, we go through phases. We hear words like psychopath, which is not a psychological there's no diagnosis for a psychopath. It's a made up, it's probably from the movie Psycho decades and decades ago. But, we see this kind of abuse of and fanaticism over, and again, it's about identity, right?
Yes.
It's about, if I can put a label onto something, then I can know what that something is. And if I can know what that something is, then I'm able to attack it. I'm able to go at it. I'm able to progress or regress or better understand myself. The issue is that, so many of us, when you try to confine yourself to that disorder or to that thing or to that marital situation or to that relationship situation, there may be some commonality, sure. But unless you completely know yourself and the other person you're in a relationship with and how you're going to react to each moment and instance and this and that and the other, there's going to be some fine tuning, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you only know how to work on, let's say Honda Civics for whatever reason, and someone brings in a Lamborghini, you might know some of the thing, how to do this and that and the other, but you're going to have to use different parts. You're going to have to look at the diagnostics a little differently.
Yes. Okay. I have a sort of a humorous question, but it's rooted in seriousness. Totally. I mean, the amount of times I have heard from friends, girls I've dated, girls I've worked with, typically girls, I don't mean to stereotype this, but just in my own experience, my ex is a narcissist. Mm-hmm. And I've heard stories where I'm like, I'm not again, expert, but sure, that sort of sounds serious, I suppose. And there's a meme floating around that I've actually posted because I found it hilarious. And it had, some girl with a martini in a booth, and it says, "My ex is such a narcissist. Dating in this modern world is hard for us empaths." And another word that you hear a lot, I'm like, an empath. I've seen people label themselves. It's like, what is that? Do you see that too, like in your practice? Like, so I'm an empath.
Right. Yeah. It's another term that's kind of just thrown out there to make you, at least in my, it's a weird term. It's like, okay, what do you mean by that? And then it kind of crumbles.
Yes.
Like, I can feel what other people are feeling. And it's like, okay, what do we do with that? you know? And as a therapist, it's actually almost discouraged, to be an empath, if you will, at least in my opinion. I mean, there's a term called transference and countertransference within our field. Transference is when the patient or the client is almost using you or treating you like their dad or like a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or you remind them of their brother and they're trying to heal, you as this kind of archetype, or, you remind them of someone and so they act a certain way towards you. Countertransference is the opposite. And it's, a client comes in that reminds you of your mother. So you treat them differently because of that.
Yes.
And this can be a very dangerous thing. At least when I was in grad school, it's very much kind of discouraged. And then as you start to understand certain aspects of that and mature as a psychotherapist, there are times when you can actually use that as a reflection of, okay, what's going on inside of me? Why is that? How am I going to deal with that? What is that telling me about myself? But yes, this whole empath. So, a doctor, there's a reason why surgeons are discouraged from performing surgery on their spouses or children.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Or others. And psychotherapists, the same. It's unethical for us to treat anyone, not just anyone that we're related to, anyone that we're friends with, anyone that we hang out with. Personally, if no one who's ever been to my house can be, my client. And it's because the therapeutic client relationship is so unique, and it has to be something it's not a mentorship. It's not a father and child. It's not a priest. It's not like a presbyter's role. It's not a doctor's role. It is unique in and of itself. But that empath thing, it's nice. I mean, sure. Yeah, I'm glad you have empathy for someone or sympathy. Usually what it means. But yeah, it's one of those kind of pop terms.
Yes. Yeah. There's so many of those. I saw you talking about something that I could relate with, let's say, people in my life, and it's called catastrophizing.
Sure.
And I mean, I can say it. Maybe my mom watches this. She would laugh and smile and go, "Oh, I guess that is me." But I've always teased her, like, for instance, if I go on a vacation, it's like, "Oh, honey, better leave me your login for your bank or whatever in case you die." It's like, I'm talking about a fun trip and you automatically think like, well, what if you go in a plane crash on this? It's like, goodness gracious, like, we don't have to go there every time with a scenario. Is that sort of catastrophizing?
Yes. Yeah. It's also kind of like, it's a loss. It's kind of like, oh man, I have to take this test. And if I get an F on this test, then I'll fail out of the class. And if I fail out of the class, then I'll have to stay back and take the class again. If I take the class again, then I'm going to be, this and that. And it keeps going and going. And like, oh my gosh, if I'm going to retake this class, then somehow I'm not going to be able to be the profession that I want, in the profession I want to be. I'll never get married. I won't do this. Everyone think I'm a loser. And then if everyone thinks I'm a loser, then, and it's just this huge snowball, right? So, catastrophizing can be very dangerous. However, there's a lot behind it. It's all about control.
Mm.
Again, Bishop John Abdullah, you'll probably hear me reference him a few times because he's the one who inspired me to be a therapist, and it has his doctorate in counseling, I believe, also. And he would explain, he always says, when you let go of control, you gain all the control.
Mm.
It's this idea of like, we are so obsessed with trying to control the things that are outside of our control that we get anxious, right? And we try to mitigate it in every possible way that we can, even though it's unrelated to us. Your wife is unable to control how the pilot lands the plane or crashes the plane, right? But if she gets all your passwords, if she, gets the keys to this, that, and the other, if she, takes control of your bank accounts or whatever, it makes her feel like it's going to somehow be easier to process that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In reality, a recent study was done. I think it was like something like 97% of the things we worry about never happen in our lives.
That's big.
I asked my clients, and I got this from my dad, actually. I went into the cycle of catastrophizing up until years ago. And he would be like, what were you worried about a year ago? It's like, can you even remember what you were worried about a month ago? So what makes you think in a year you're going to even remember what you're worrying about today? Right? What happens when we catastrophize is we're grasping for control.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And it's dangerous on many levels, but one way is it becomes almost addictive, right? We catastrophize, we become anxious. Anxiety, not worry, it's our fight or flight kind of mode, but there's nowhere to fly to, right? There's nothing to fight because it's out of your control. And so our bodies kind of freak out, right? So then that freak out becomes a form of motivation, interestingly enough. When dopamine isn't doing enough to do what it needs to do, you could use anxiety. I don't recommend it. But when you're anxious about something, you want to do everything to prevent that from happening. The issue with catastrophizing is it's so out of the wheelhouse of possibility, or it's just so incredibly unlikely. And even if it did happen, I tell my clients, I was telling a client the other day, I was like, you're sitting there and you could have a gun on you, and you could pull that gun on me. And I mean, we are in Texas, so it's a little more possible, but I was like, you could have a gun on you and you could pull it on me and you could shoot me technically. Now, the likelihood of you having a gun on you and doing that is very, very, very low. I'm not worried about that. But if I was, it's interesting. Anxiety would tell me to, okay, start freaking out now in order to almost get ready to get shot. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work. It's so ironic, and it's this huge liar where it says your body freaks out for one main reason, and it's in order to prepare you for the suffering that might happen. So if someone has that gun on me, it's like telling me to, okay, they might have a gun on you, so start stabbing yourself in the leg with a knife so that you can get ready for the pain. Mm-hmm. Right? When in reality, all that is going to do is make me weaker. Mm-hmm. And anxiety just wreaks havoc on our central nervous system. Mm-hmm. It makes us weaker, so when those things do come, we aren't as prepared to fight as if, we weren't worrying in the first place,
Is there a thing somewhat maybe related to this that it sprung into my mind as you're discussing catastrophizing, where is there like a phenomenon of self-sabotage? Is that in the similar vein where where I've seen people. Actually, I just talked to a single guy at work yesterday, and I was asking him how dating was going, and he said this last girl I was dating would just create these things to fight about, and I was like, this came out of nowhere, and he was like, I think she was just sort of like concocting dramatic scenarios, and we'd fight, and after a few months, he's like, I can't be around. I'm not like that. I don't understand the need to like create some sort of disagreement. And I thought it's like she was sabotaging the whole thing. And he's like, yeah, but it doesn't make any sense. Why would someone do that?
Oh, there's a few things in there. I mean, it goes down to, why do we fight? I think we fight with people we care about, at least if we're kind of being rational, right? If I'm walking downtown and a guy starts yelling at me, I have a few different options, right? I can either curl up in a ball and start crying because I care so much about what he thinks, I can get back in his face and start yelling at him, right? And escalate things. Or I can cross the street and keep walking to the cafe that I wanted to go to, right? Obviously, the third choice is the most rational, right? Just ignore him and keep going on with your day. But it's because that person isn't special personally to me. Now, if that was my sister that I saw on my street, or my brother, it would be a different kind of story. It's very interesting because so fighting is always a call to intimacy. So again, Bishop John, I warned you, I was going to bring him up.
Yeah.
We were sitting writing this book together, and at one point he said, God forgive me, but he said, have you ever turned on the TV and watched a couple fight on the television and turned the sound off and looked at their body language? And I said, no, you weirdo. Like, why would I ever do that? But he was like, it's really interesting. Okay. There are these two people in a room, right? And one of them starts yelling. And then the other one starts yelling. And then the other one starts yelling, and they go back and forth and back, and they get louder and louder. And they start motioning back and forth at each other. And if any of us have ever argued with a significant other, they can understand this, right? And the reason for that is because we yell at each other because we want to be heard. So we think that by being louder, somehow this person is going to understand, like, I'm being so clear and I'm obviously so right. Let me scream in this person's face so they can better hear me. Okay. Let me get closer to them so I can be heard better, because it means so much to me that they understand where I'm coming from. Right. Fighting, I tell people, it's not, when I see couples in my office, I have much more hope for the ones who are fighting and screaming at each other in front of me, right, versus the ones who sit there and won't say anything.
That are just indifferent.
What are they fighting for? There's this passion there still to cling on to something, and so it could be, and again, I don't know your friend, I don't know who he's talking about.
Sure.
When I hear people randomly bringing up things to fight, I'm hearing, I want to know that I am still worth something to you. I need to feel appreciation. I say that I've never met with a struggling couple in my office where both people felt appreciated. A huge thing. But your question was about self-sabotage, right? Self-sabotage in relation to catastrophizing, it can be. Oftentimes, self-sabotage is more related to a fear of failure or a fear of success. Right, which is an interesting kind of concept. We don't hear too much about fear of success. But if I'm successful, that means I have more responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
I have more responsibility, I can let more people down. If I let more people down, then that's a huge burden. And so let me not pursue success and coast, while still fearing it, and I can do that by self-sabotaging. So people who are in relationships and they don't know why they just blew everything up after 6 months for the X amount of time, right? Because things are getting serious. We're getting attached. We're getting these ideas of, oh man, let me blow this up. It's either that or it could be a lot of things. But oftentimes I see too, this idea of, I don't believe I can be loved, but I know I love this person. So let me test those limits as much as possible, right? And see if they still embrace me. Let me act like a jerk, right? Even though that's not who I am. Let me act like a jerk and see if they will abandon me, right? So it's a trust thing. And it's also a understanding of fear of abandonment, fear of letting others down. So it's a very devastating kind of cycle,
Yeah.
That's where I see a lot of catastrophizing intertwined in that as well. If I do this, then she's going to leave and yada, yada. And there's a lot of usually anxiety and fear around that.
As you guys know, the team at Podsworth Media has worked with me for a long time producing this show. A big part of that over the past couple of years has been them using their Podsworth app to make the audio sound clean, level, professional, even when the raw recordings were super sketchy, which mine can be sometimes. In fact, this one that you're listening to right now is super sketchy. I took this microphone sock off here just to show you how crappy it will sound, except when they put it through the Podsworth app, it sounds beautiful. I've got this annoying white noise maker going on. It's driving me crazy. If you want to hear how bad this recording is before they put it through the Podsworth app, you can hear the full before and after demo for yourself at the link in the description. The app recently got a huge update and it's better than ever. So good, in fact, that it can take almost any atrocious voice recordings and make it sound great. They remove background noise. It cuts down on plosives. It fixes clipping when your gain is too high. It reduces reverb, removes clicks, pops, improves tone, and the level of the dialogue is even and consistent. So if I move around like this, which I sometimes do when I get excited, it'll fix all of that. It's super simple. Go to podsworth.com, click Get Started. Drag and drop your audio files or open them right from your smartphone browser. Customize your settings if you want, but honestly, the default works great for most podcast recordings. Here's the cool part. Enter code BUCK50, BUCK50 for 50% off of your first order. No account needed, just email and payment. Then you get the download link in your inbox with your cleaned up files. It's perfect for podcasts, YouTube videos, sermons, homilies, audiobooks, anything like that you want to sound legitimate and professional. Remember, use code BUCK50 for half off your first order. And you're supporting this show. Thank you, guys. And then if I act like a jerk and then they do leave me, I'm going to go, what a narcissist. Kidding.
Well, at least it's within my control and I have an answer for why they left.
Yes. Yeah.
As opposed to this random idea that like one day I'm going to wake up and they're going to be gone. So then it's a good opportunity to go into childhood.
Mm-hmm.
When did that happen to you before?
Yep.
It's usually an unnatural kind of pattern. Yeah.
When I knew I was going to have you on, I put out on my Instagram story just a question saying, have you known or seen people that are sort of self-obsessed or self-worshiping in the name of healing? Is that a common thing? Do you come into people with this?
To some extent.
Let me sort of clarify.
Sure,
You'll see, I'm in my healing journey. I for a long time gave all I could to being a mom or being a husband or a dad. and now I'm focused only on me.
Right.
Everything is going to be about me. I've done that other thing. This is about my healing journey and focusing on only me.
Yeah.
Thoughts on this sort of thing?
Sure. I mean, it's so contrary to our Orthodox understanding, at least.
Yes.
Of healing. I mean, on so many levels. But just practically, my question is, okay, what is so abusive about, what are they trying to escape from, right?
Mm.
So let's say they went through an abusive relationship, right? Like a physically abusive relationship, and they were able to escape that, thank God, right?
Yeah.
And from there, it's again, the whole throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? Like I was a mom, I was, in this career, I was doing that, but now, like, since I escaped, I'm done with everything. I need to kill off that old person. It's a form of suppression, really. And then now I'm in my me era, or whatever you want to call it, of healing. But it gives this implication, and these are extremes, okay? It gives this implication that everything related to that one person who is abusive is now off limits. And we don't, as Orthodox, from my understanding at least, is that we don't believe in kind of this approach at all. We believe in transfiguration. We believe in baptizing these things. We believe in being able to look back and as opposed to be traumatized by my own family, because it's every time I see them, I see him, right? Or my old job because of, whatever it is. We take a more kind of solid and eternal approach of, okay, but it's brought me to this moment. And in this moment right now, at least for me, I'm here talking with Buck Johnson on his podcast about cool things, And so it's about also kind of living in the present. When our enemy becomes the focus of how we direct our lives, how much have you really escaped him?
Right.
When everything you're doing is because and influenced by him or her or it or whatever, whatever the situation is. This is a huge issue in our society too, is that we are starved for an enemy that we can gather around and butt up against. And it's such an interesting approach. It's an addictive kind of, people love to hate, And if you could find a cause behind that hate, you can find a group of people who can hate likewise, then you can form these groups that ultimately are dictated by the thing that you hate. So if you hate, the president or the last president, or if you hate, this group or that group, and you're doing everything to show, if your life is dictated by showing and being contrarian and showing everyone why this is, why this one person or this group or whatever it is evil, then you're kind of putting them in your hands, especially if you see them as a perfect evil, as someone or something that can do no right. In those instances, ironically, they become the leader of whatever group that is hating them, because they could say the sky is orange or the sky is blue, and they'll say, no, the sky is orange. So who's kind of dictating? Like, this is why hate is such a ironic and weird kind of thing in general. Sorry, I don't know how I got on that tangent, but
I'm right with you.
Being dictated, are we letting our trauma lead us as opposed to placing it at the footstool of God?
Right.
And praying for healing. trauma in particular, which is kind of usually what we're hearing about when we hear it's my era, it's my time. Trauma is something that we have to, and I'm trained in EMDR therapy and I work a lot in trauma. It's something we have to revisit and dive into. We don't get over anything. We have to push through things, in order to become more mentally stable, in order to actually heal. I think it's Carl Jung. There's this quote. I recently heard from a priest by Carl Jung, who's this very famous psychologist and an amazing one. He was truly fantastic. But he said that when your face is to the ground, that's where you find gold. And how orthodox is that? Like, we don't worship suffering. Suffering is this tool, right? There are plenty of people who have gone through trials and tribulation given to them by God. And that has led them to leave the church, right? Because they didn't want to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
They felt like they couldn't handle it.
Yes.
And others, it's the exact opposite. It's a tool, like a hammer. If I had with a hammer, I can hit someone with it, or I can build a church. And so this idea of, ignoring our past sufferings, or even or embracing and ultimately kind of worshiping our sufferings, it's this fine line.
Yes.
Right? And we as Orthodox are all about sobriety. And I can't emphasize this enough because there's so much out there in the Orthodox realms, in our realms, where it's so dramatic one way or the other. We are adamantly about sobriety. And and it's the same when it comes to our suffering. We don't focus on that. We focus on Christ. We bear our suffering and we take up our cross and we follow him. And when suffering comes, we don't deny it. We don't pretend like it's not there, right? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I guess sort of pun intended with the sobriety comment, but I want to ask you about the inclination we can have to dwell on our past and the problems, let's say in trauma. And some of my friends I tease that are ex-alcoholics will constantly, it's been 7 years to this day since I've had a drink. And I'm like, if you're past this stuff, why do you still think about how long it's been? It feels like there's an overly focus, like, oh, I stayed away from this one thing this long. And I always think like, okay, well, then kind of let it go and don't do it again. But I feel like sometimes with people, there's trauma in the past and they sort of use that to identify who they are now. And there's this inclination of like, if it's like a wound that's been scabbed over and it's healing and you're like, let me pick at it again. Oh, look, it's bleeding. Damn it. Now I've got trauma again. And I better focus on me and heal this. It's like a never ending cycle that keeps happening.
Yes. Trauma and addiction are very unique, I feel like. But your point is taken, right? Trauma is definitely something that, again, you have to go through it again in a way. And in a form of therapy, like I said, I mentioned EMDR therapy.
Yes.
In this, you're almost not in a meditative state, but you're remembering it very deeply, And it's about kind of reclaiming control over that, bringing you into the present, right? And reprogramming in a way the reaction to it. Trauma is one of those things, well, I'll put it like this. Our brains are kind of pattern recognizing machines in a way, not to belittle the mind, obviously. But if something happened, right, where it was completely, let's say like a car just came through this wall, right? I'm using all these graphic details. I'm sorry. I like to work in extremes to get my...
No. I'm a firefighter. I have been to multiple calls where cars did go right through a house.
Okay.
So.
Well, hopefully it doesn't happen. But if it did,
yes.
It's so outside of my scope of possibility. I'm not expecting that to happen, right? And my mind isn't expecting that to happen. And so if it did happen, it would be this kind of shock, right? Or even something more chaotic. It'd be this shock, and our minds would have to... What happens is the person's mind kind of goes over it over and over and over again to try to make rational that which is unrational, which is completely chaotic, to try to give reason to something that's completely unreasonable, right? And so our minds will, a lot of people with PTSD talk about how they just play over and over and over again these past experiences, or a past experience, because the mind is still trying to heal and comprehend the absolute chaos that occurred. The mind works a lot in prediction, expecting the next thing to happen, and has a wide kind of field for that. When things fall outside of that field, it's shocking, right? And it can take a while for the mind to heal from that. Addiction is very interesting, and it's not as much of an specialty of mine, but it can help to have those milestones.
Okay, fair enough.
Dates. It can help to kind of recognize, okay, I've gone this far and whatnot, and but yes, again, we have to be cautious about it becoming our identity.
You mentioned ADHD earlier. It's funny, I in the fire department just recently made a call. A kid was seizing, and I don't know, he's like 4 or something. And she's like, he's been on seizure medications. He got this medication, this thing. He's on ADHD. And I was like, goodness gracious. I didn't say anything, of course. It's not my place to judge and call this out. We're just there to help the emergency. But I started thinking and talking with my coworkers, like, man, a 4-year-old or something on ADHD. See, I don't know that I'd be super focused when I was 4 years old on stuff either. Is there an overabundance of are we overly medicated in this way, or some of these? I mean, there's got to be a real path. Do you see these medications as helpful, overprescribed? What is the story on some of that for you?
I'd say yes and no. I think, but mostly yes. I mean, unfortunately, so ADHD is a specialty of mine. I work a lot with ADHD, especially in adults. And, you'll hear a lot of things of people saying it's not a real disorder, which is kind of not. It's really nonsense to say that. It definitely is. You can even see patterns of the brain. It's an irregulation of dopamine distribution throughout the brain. However, it's interesting is, why are we giving the medication? A 4-year-old, that's, I think, the youngest I've ever heard, to be honest. 5, 6, okay, I've heard that as well. But it's an interesting, we've seen it steadily increase, dramatically increase from the 90s into the early 2000s and today. But we also have to ask ourselves, what positions are we putting these children in? Yes. Right? We're asking them to sit down and shut up for 8 hours a day in a classroom. Right. It's ridiculous. My daughter, she goes to this charter school. There's no screens, and she, like her father, has ADHD. And these aren't things I throw around. I never like to throw around diagnoses lightly, but there's no screens there. It's pretty strict, and X, Y, and Z, and yeah, I mean, the idea that they're going to sit down and that any kid can sit down and focus like that it's wild. And then when they're not focusing, and they're not able to stay focused, which like how many of us adults can do that, honestly?
Right.
I mean, I know I can't.
There's people watching this right now, Nicholas, that are wondering their eyes and, hey, you guys get back. Listen to Dr. Nicholas here.
I was scrolling on my phone while watching TV last night. It's like absolutely ridiculous. You know what I mean? And, but the parents think, oh, their teacher keeps saying they can't focus, right? And yes, in some circumstances, it is ADHD. And in many circumstances, it is that. But these medications should not be taken lightly. It needs to be really understood. I mean, there's a lot of, funny enough, the fear was that it would become very habit forming, which actually has kind of been somewhat debunked, I think. And the part of the brain that distributes dopamine actually over time shows to be more active in a natural way once you get off ADHD medications, if you've taken it consistently. But it is a fear of over prescribing. I mean, there's so many. I'm very much for medication. Again, medication is a tool.
Yes.
Am I for it? Okay, what's the situation and what are we talking about? What's the drug? Am I against it? What's the situation? What is the drug? But I think it's the society that we live in that demands so much, especially this generation, and that along with kind of the cheap dopamine that we get from social media, from constantly scrolling, from Reels and Instagram. It's this constant kind of marketing to hijack our minds and our attention that has really wreaked havoc on the way that we're able to process, remember, really just think in general, and create better avenues for problem solving skills.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be fascinating to see what this upcoming generation who have only had social media
and AI.
I mean, that's a whole other can of worms that I am not trained in, but yeah.
I just mean in regards to if you're entertained at every second, it's almost like it's your attention span has atrophied for young people. Mm-hmm. I don't know that there will be movies over 10 minutes in 10 years. And if you're so used to getting this dopamine hit and scroll, comment, post, and then your academic stuff is, let me have AI write this for me. Let me have AI. It's like you're sort of a can of mush looking for happiness every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Kind of worrisome.
My biggest fear with AI, I mean, there's a few, but then again, I'm not in tech, is exactly what you kind of point to, is reading and writing and learning. The issue with having so many things at ease is that no one wants to be trained in how to learn, and this is a huge issue developmentally for the mind, and not just in our childhood and adolescence, but well into our adulthood. Like your brain is a muscle. You have to train it. Mm-hmm. And society's making it more and more difficult, or more and more tempting not to. Yes.
Especially for young people, when maybe it seems more fun to watch a thing than learn the thing,
Right.
It's to some extent, it's not like I can blame a child for wanting to watch something scrolling than actually sit down and learn. It's the people around them that are more responsible in that regard. Like goodness, I have kind of two places to go with this, and we don't have too much time left. Okay. In your experience with your practice, did the COVID years have a psychological impact on people? And even, I mean, you're Orthodox Christian, we could say spiritual impact. Are we mentally sicker since that stuff happened? Are we spiritually sicker? What is your experience in that regard?
I don't know about spiritually. Probably. But as far as mentally, I was smiling because my first job as a therapist, out of grad school after my practicums and everything, was at the healthcare agency in Orange County, where I worked with public conservatorships. So it was people who were too mentally unstable for the prison system and too dangerous for society, right? So a lot of hallucinations, schizophrenia, paranoid delusions, and then I would go in and be their therapist. And I started my job late January of 2020 with that healthcare agency.
Yes.
And
fresh new year, all laid out in front of you there.
Exactly. It's only up from here. And, so it's hard for me to say. There's a benefit that came out of it, I will say, at least, because we've heard, it was just mentally torturous. Isolation it's a form of torture.
Mm-hmm.
We know this. We've known this for, since, gosh, just look at the horrific experiments that the Nazis did on isolation.
Mm-hmm.
This is not new stuff. Let alone the amount of, elderly that, relied on community outside of their homes or wherever else that couldn't be tended to. And it's just, I think we're starting to see, and we may continue, we will see how this has dramatically impacted the mental health for society. But one thing that it did do, at least, is destigmatize, to some extent, reaching out for mental health help,
mm-hmm.
right? It destigmatized it greatly destigmatized to an extent, right? The kind of like, if you're depressed, just suck it up. You don't need to talk to anyone type of thing. Or why would you go to a therapist? People are very open, generally, about, I see a therapist.
Yes.
My therapist said this.
Yes.
Or when I was growing up, it would be like, well, what's wrong with you? Why are you seeing a therapist?
Mm-hmm.
This is a good thing, I think that's a good thing. But again, it's a fine line of what is therapy to you.
Mm-hmm.
But isolation, making communities kind of foreign to each other. It's just, the isolation in COVID was a horrible, horrible thing.
Yes.
Relationship for,
Yeah. It's, in closing then, I would like you to say really anything that you sort of want to leave with and leave people something to think about, or maybe change their mind, or anything regarding therapy, the way it's done by yourself, who is an Orthodox Christian, and anything in this regard.
I think it's just kind of going back to the beginning of this talk, which is to kind of demonize, therapy within the context of the church is extremely foreign. It's extremely foreign. Therapy is it's something that is needed. It needs to be done correctly. It needs to be done with sobriety. At least on the part of the therapist. I can't tell you how many, priests and clergymen I see and who come for counsel as well. Our priests need it oftentimes. And this is, it's a very odd thing. It's a very odd thing that some radical, interesting corners of orthodoxy have taken on this idea that psychotherapy and therapy is something that is not complementary in its whole to the church. So I think from that, is it the end all be all? Absolutely not. There needs to be a movement, of therapy and into sanctity, right? If you're constantly seeing a doctor because you're sick, you don't get demonized for it. And it'd be ridiculous for the church to, let alone all the saints we have who practice such things, who are doctors and whatnot. It's interesting, that idea. I was looking at this one book recently that was explaining the history of therapists and, spiritual sickness and whatnot. And the word, therapist itself, it goes way back to ancient times, pre-Christianity, but it was, those who were, eventually, like, a lot of priests were kind of titled with this and titled with the word doctor as well, but they were doctors of the mind and of the heart and of the soul, not of the body. But there's always been this, there's been a reverence for doctors and for those who help counsel and mentor. And I'm not sure where this idea of demonizing it come from. Demonize the weird, radical beliefs within psychotherapy, the selfishness, the ideology, idolatry that can occur when someone takes that too far. But gosh, people do that with the gym. When the gym becomes their entire life, when the gym becomes their church, when working out in their own self-image becomes the, center of their lives. We could do the same thing with the mind, but none of those things mean anything if it's not, offered up to God and if it's not used for His glory.
Well said. Would you like to plug anything, websites, the book? You can plug anything you'd like, Nicholas.
Sure. You can order Building an Orthodox Marriage by me and Bishop John Abdullah from St. Vladimir Seminary Press, SVS Press. And you can visit my website. It's ngmtherapy.com. And add me on Instagram. Same thing, NGM Therapy.
Got it. I will link all of these in the show notes page for this episode. Nicholas Mamey, thanks for being here, sir.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
All right. As this drops, guys, as this episode drops on Tuesday, the 21st, in 2 days is our Patreon supporters meeting with none other than Father Emmanuel Lemelson. He's been on the show. You guys, I had a lot of people reach out and say, get him back on, which we will do. But I wanted first to get him in to discuss some things with the Patreon supporters, which you can be one, $5 or more per month, patreon.com/counterflow. Obviously, I think if you guys follow Father Emmanuel, that you'll know he's sort of an expert in finance and economics and where things are going in that direction. So things are volatile in that world. So I wanted to get his thoughts on some of that stuff. And of course, it will be an Ask the Priest Anything. So you guys that are part of it can just ask him whatever you'd like. I think that's all I got for now. Thank you again to Nicholas for being here with us. Hope you guys enjoyed this show, and we will talk to you next time.
Like the sound of the Counterflow Podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.
This has been a Dissident Media production.